have a tiebreaker coming up. Some of you are happy, most of you should be. I would like to ask that you put your paper bags on the floor so that when we continue the video, our second great thing in the form of a wonderful leader is going to talk with you, and I hope you will engage with her. You know, I heard from a parent here this morning that her student, her child, after yesterday's reception at QAI, came up to her and said, "Mom, I've found my people." And that to me is a great thing that we accomplish. We also want to connect you not only with your people, but because you're broad-minded young students, we would like you to reach across aisles and to think about always connecting with people who are not your people. But it is my great pleasure to introduce you to someone who I think is, if I may not be presumptuous, my kind of person. Nancy Lindborg is the president of the United States Institute of Peace. She's led the organization for the past 4 years at the helm of a staff of nearly 300 individuals working to build peace in the world's most difficult places. I just want to credit Nancy for hiring Anne Louise Colgan, our friend and director of public education, and Anne Louise also oversees the external relations for USIP, and of course Alison Sturma, who you saw before, Yusuf Sultan, and Adriana Lagorio. I think I got her name right. Yes. Lagorio. Prior to joining USIP, Nancy Lindborg served as the Assistant Administrator for the Bureau of Democracy, Conflict, and Humanitarian Assistance at USAID. From 2010 through early 2015, Ms. Lindborg led USAID teams focused on mitigating conflict and providing urgent humanitarian assistance. Prior to joining USAID, she spent 14 years leading Mercy Corps, an important nonprofit organization that she grew. And she began her career internationally working in Kazakhstan and Nepal. Nancy, for 3 years you've been a great partner to us, 3 of your 4 years as president of USIP. It's tremendous to have you here with us this Saturday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that wonderful introduction. Great to see you. Welcome and hello also to Pat, a wonderful friend from Nashville who we've had a chance to visit. And I second your appreciation for Anne Louise and the mighty public education team. So thank you very much. Congratulations on everybody here for completing this year's academic WorldQuest competition. Whew, you all feel like a big sigh of relief at this point in the program. I'm delighted that USIP was able to be a part of your journey this year. We were also happy to host this event, but also to be a category sponsor for the quiz itself. And I think all of you should be very proud to be representing your communities here in the nation's capital today. And I know you've just spent the day immersed in difficult questions, but I wanted to start with a couple of statistics that we think about a lot here at U.S. Institute of Peace. And that is, today, the global youth population is the largest that the world has ever seen. There are 1.8 billion people between the ages of 10 and 24 living in the world today. 9 out of 10 of those live in less developed countries, and a third of them live in countries that are torn apart by conflict and violence. Places like Yemen, Nigeria, Syria. 1/3 of those 1.8 billion youth. What you read about and what you hear a lot about is that these young people are at risk of being victims of this violence. Sometimes they're seen as risks of being perpetrators of violence, the possibility of being swept up into violent extremism. At U.S. Institute of Peace, we are very focused on the third category because we know that people between those ages can, and more importantly, they must be powerful partners for peace and powerful partners for a more peaceful global future. I've had the wonderful experience of working with some of these youth. There's a young man named Mahmud Khalil, who was preparing to go to university. He was 18 years old, living in Damascus. In 2011, he was headed to Aleppo to go to his first year of college when the war broke out. So he had to make an abrupt turn into Lebanon, where he became a refugee and a day laborer. Imagine on your way to college and suddenly you're without a home, without your family, and you are working as a day laborer. Instead of being sucked into despair, he began working to provide education for those who were much younger than he, the many refugees under the age of 10, and created schools and education. And he is now, 8 years later, provided education for some 5,000 young refugee children, and with the help of other sponsors, is completing his education at the American University of Beirut. It's what happens when, instead of succumbing to the despair, you commit yourself to a better pathway. Or a young woman named Fatima Al Bakr, who lives in Borno, which is a town in that northeastern part of Nigeria that has been torn apart by Boko Haram. I'm sure you've heard about it. And she saw her community being torn apart with Boko Haram burning schools, kidnapping women, children, and youth. And what's really difficult is how hard it is for those kidnapped people to go home again. And so she, at the age of 24, started an organization that helped to reintegrate women and children in particular who wanted to go back home to their communities. So Mahmoud and Fatima are both part of this global network called Generation Change that USIP supports around the world. And each year we bring some of them to Dharamsala for a 2-day dialogue with the Dalai Lama, Nobel Prize-winning global icon for a more peaceful world. And it's really an extraordinary opportunity. All of these youth are from conflict-affected countries, and they have this electrifying conversation with the Dalai Lama, who is himself a refugee. And in 2017, one of these youth asked the Dalai Lama for his advice on how best to handle the continuing conflict in South Sudan. And the Dalai Lama looked him in and said, very simply, invest in education. It sounds simple, but it's really profound when you think about the importance of youth for the future of their countries and for their world. So U.S. Institute of Peace works to support training and education and opportunities for our fellows in the Global Change Network, and we know that that's a key to a more peaceful future. You may have noticed, in fact, as you entered the building, that we are right on the mall, and you saw all the monuments, the Lincoln Memorial, the Vietnam Memorial. We have an Einstein Memorial next door. When our building was built here in 2011, this became the corner of the mall known as War and Peace. And it's a very appropriate setting given our history. We were founded 35 years ago by members of Congress who were themselves veterans of war, of the Korean War and of World War II. And they came back from their battlefield experiences seared by what they saw, by the violence, the tragedy, and the cost of war. And they were determined to help our country have more capacity so that we could wage peace as effectively as we wage war. And so, with their efforts and with support from a grassroots effort, USIP was founded by Congress as a nonpartisan, national, but independent institute dedicated to preventing and resolving violent conflict. And we were charged with embodying America's commitment to peace. So we focus on education, on research and analysis, and we work on the ground to support local partners in some of the toughest places around the world, where people are on the front lines of helping conflict to be transformative instead of violent, and to resolve it when it does become violent. Importantly, we also provide a platform for bringing people together from across different divides. As Bill was saying, it's important that you have a way to understand other points of view. And we do that around the world. In places like Iraq, where I was 2 weeks ago, we have worked with tribal and religious leaders to help them come together to form local peace accords that help people return, many of whom have been displaced by the violence and the ravages of ISIS over the last 3 years. Here in Washington, we have a platform for bringing members of Congress together. We have something called the Bipartisan Congressional Dialogue Series, where members of the Republican and Democrat Congress come to debate and discuss and examine some of the toughest foreign policy issues that we face as a nation. So I know you read a lot that there is no bipartisan spirit left in Washington. I can assure you that there is, and we hear a lot of it. And in fact, we know that some of the toughest, most critical foreign policy challenges that we have faced as a country through our history have only been resolved through true bipartisan action. In short, peace building requires that we bridge divides, both overseas and here at home. Your generation is an absolutely vital and necessary part of making that happen. You belong to a generation that by any measure is more optimistic, more connected, you are more educated than any generation before you. So never underestimate your capacity and your role in building peace in your communities, in your country, and around the world. USIP can be a resource for you. Remember that on our website you can find podcasts and websites to keep you up to date on what's happening around the world. We have resources for students who are interested in learning more about what it means to be a peace builder, resources for educators who want to incorporate this into the curriculum. And importantly, we have information about the Peace Trail on the National Mall. For those of you who want to take a walk through those powerful monuments, download the Peace Trail app. Peace always begins with words. You know, we hear this in kindergarten, use your words. In fact, this is probably the most important adage that you can ever learn. And it's important that you have the opportunity and the ability to have tough conversations. It's the people you agree with the least who you often need to listen to the most in order to chart a way forward. Let me close with a story from Iraq, where I was just a few weeks ago. Just before Christmas this year, the Grand Mufti of Iraq gave a sermon in which he denounced Christmas, and he forbade all the Muslims in Iraq to participate in any Christian festivities or to even wish their Christian neighbors Merry Christmas. So a few days later, on Christmas Day, many, many Muslims in all of the major urban centers, Baghdad, Basra, throughout Anbar, all these names that you've read in the paper, they all came out to celebrate Christmas with their Christian neighbors. And more importantly, they did an online campaign where a small group hacked the number of the Grand Mufti. And they created a campaign called the Million Caller Campaign, where they invited 1 million people to call the Grand Mufti to wish him Merry Christmas. A month later, the Grand Mufti's brother died. And Cardinal Sacco, who told me this story when I was with him just a few weeks ago, Cardinal Sacco, one of the religious leaders for the Christians, went to pay his respects to the Grand Mufti with condolences for the death of his brother. That's now opened up a whole new dialogue, and they have created a whole new way of talking together and with their constituents about the importance of Christians and Muslims living peacefully together. So never underestimate what you can do and the power of individuals to break through and find new ways for peace. Thank you for being here today. I look forward to your questions. I think we have time for a few. And it's always very exciting to have this kind of energy in the building. So thank you, and I look forward to your questions. So raise your hand. We have mics roaming around. And don't ask me any of the questions that you just answered, because I may not be able to answer them.
Hi, My name is Ian Clank. I'm from Buffalo, New York.
Uh-huh.
I was just wondering if you have any advice for young people like us that are interested in careers in government or international affairs.
Go for it. I think it's a real, I mean, I want to really encourage you, especially for public service. I think that there's nothing more rewarding to know that you're getting up every morning and making a difference in the world, and being a part of something much larger than yourself. In terms of how to get there, you know, if you want to go international, you eventually need to live overseas. So I would urge you to seek out opportunities for internships or semester abroad, various ways that expose you to other cultures and other ways of living so that you get that basis of understanding that can both inform you, equip you, and probably inspire you. But I encourage you to pursue that path. Right here? Mic right there.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask you, my name is Ben. I'm from El Paso, Texas. Yes. Well, I wanted to know, do you ever have any days where you feel like what you're doing maybe isn't making the difference that you'd like it to make? And then how do you overcome that?
That is such a good question. You know, who doesn't? Absolutely. But you have to just power forward with that core faith and belief that it is the accumulation of all of our actions, of people all walking together in the same direction, that will ultimately make a difference. And, you know, I go to really terrible places, like Iraq, that have been torn apart, and you do meet people who, in much more difficult people, you know, like Mahmud, like Fakira, who get up every morning in much worse situations, and keep going. And I find, you know, so I've done for 30 some years now, I've worked in a lot of terrible places, and friends and family like, God, doesn't that get you down? But it really doesn't, because that's where sometimes you see people at their most extraordinary and who are doing incredible things. I also, sometimes when I tell people, yeah, I work at the U.S. Institute of Peace, and they go, yeah, how's that going? You know, because you read the news and you see what's going on. But, you know, peace is a process. We say that here at USIP a lot. Peace is a process and peace is possible. But it's not an end state. It's not some place we'll arrive and we can all say, oh, that's done. We have to work at it every day. There's a quote as you leave the building by Eleanor Roosevelt that says, it's not enough to believe in peace. You have to act in it. You have to take action each and every day.
Hello, my name is Camille Ross. I'm from Shawneetown, Pennsylvania. And I was just wondering, what do you believe is the role of the internet in shaping the relations between countries? And especially considering that a lot of people are up in arms about Russian interference in the election, but I feel like it's the natural progression, considering that the internet has opened us up to so many countries. So what are your thoughts on that entire process?
Well, you know, there are week-long conferences on that question. That's a really important question. And in fact, 4 years ago, USIP spun out our data technology media work into a separate organization called Peace Tech Lab that lives in a building on our campus next door, because we think it's so important to understand how do you harness these new tools that the internet has made possible for peace. You know, they're extraordinarily powerful, and they can be for good or they can be for evil, and we see that every day. And it's not just between countries, it's within countries. Sri Lanka is a chilling example of how the internet helped bring a very vicious ideology to Sri Lanka. We see in places like Burma, where the internet has powered the kind of hate speech that has propelled some of the violence against the Rohingya and other groups. So this is a huge challenge that we collectively need to be thinking about as we all move forward. And you know, this is something that your generation is really on the front lines on. You know, they look at people who are older than 40 or 50 and you know, we didn't grow up with it. What are they? You guys are digital natives. I'm not, for example. And so as we go forward, what will be so important is that there's that intentionality and mindfulness about how to use these extraordinary tools for good and for peace. And I don't think it will be an easy conversation. I know I was recently out at Stanford University, which is ground zero for a lot of the innovation. And they are really struggling with the fact that they are graduating all of these very innovative tech brilliant people without having a grounding in the values and ethics that might help them be a better producer of some of these new tools. So this is the challenge for us, is that we ground this innovation and this technology in some very core values about how to use it ultimately in service of a more peaceful and just world.
Yeah, I'm right behind this pillar. This is great. You've actually given a lot of examples of areas like countries in the other parts of the world where there are conflicts going on, conflicts that need to be resolved, like Iraq and Burma and all. But how do we deal with creating peace within our own country, within the many cultures that make up America, and some of the cities where violence can be on certain areas very prevalent?
So our legislative mandate specifically is to look at preventing and resolving conflict overseas. But part of it is also understanding that some of the same tools, you have gone behind that pillar. Some of it is understanding that some of those same tools and techniques and approaches are applicable everywhere. And one of the things that Anne Louise and Allison and Yusuf do is engage with students, with teachers, events like this, to help bring those tools forward. And I'll make a quick plug. September 21st is the International Day of Peace, and I encourage everyone to participate in that. You can go on our website and see more about it. But this is many of the same challenges, and it requires many of the same kind of actions by each of you. I'm very taken by the importance of also having peace within yourself in order to bring peace to your community, to your country, and go forward. So a lot of it starts with getting there on an individual basis and then bringing that to the larger conversation. But it's being open to hearing other points of view, using fundamental tools of dialogue, communication, understanding that when you have disagreements, if you have a means of resolving those differences without violence, that conflict can actually be transformative. And we see that in our own country, where we have had great transformative movements that have changed our country without violence. And we look across the mall every day at the Lincoln Memorial as a stark reminder of what happens when you don't resolve those difficulties, those disagreements without violence. It tears you apart for generations.
Hello, my name is Raghav Agarwal. I'm from the great state of Texas, Houston, Texas. And I wanted to say, I agree with your statement that we have brilliant young tech-savvy students that drive innovation in colleges, yet they're not exactly instructed well enough on ethics, politics, and world affairs. They're not exactly they don't have created interest inside them. How do you propose that we as students could create that interest in our colleagues of these topics, especially considering the importance of our generation with future issues like climate change?
Well, I think there are probably a lot of creative ways for doing that, including creating the opportunities to talk about it, asking for the kinds of activities or courses or extracurricular opportunities to bring those issues forward. I know in the example I just gave at Stanford University, it's making it a required part of their graduate. They can't graduate if they don't take some of these courses. That's one way to do it. But I think also just making that a part of the ethos, that this is what you talk about and this is what matters, can be pushed forward by each individual and try to bring that forward in your school now and wherever you end up going to college. I'm a great believer in individuals making a difference.
Hi, I'm Pranav from Plano, Texas.
What's with Texas?
So one of the problems I think with peace building is that a lot of times these different groups don't even come to the negotiating table at all, right? So what are some incentives you can get, give them to actually come to the negotiating table to even talk about peace?
Well, we have a whole practice within U.S. Institute of Peace that looks at peace processes, both understanding what's worked and what hasn't worked, but also in real time supporting more inclusive peace processes. So we worked extensively to support the Colombia peace process. We're involved right now in helping to provide ideas and input and information for the Afghan peace process, and similarly for the South Sudan peace process. Finding the incentives for people to come to the table will vary depending on what the context is. And unfortunately, sometimes it does involve having the credible threat of force as a part of that incentive package. So you really need to understand what could create an incentive. Is it, in the case of South Sudan, cutting off sources of let's say, opportunities for corruption? A lot of the South Sudanese leaders skimmed off enormous amounts of their oil revenue, and if you cut that off, they would have a greater incentive to stop fighting and come to the table. So it's really about having the analytics that help you understand, given the context, how best to accomplish that. But it's a very important field to study, and if you're interested, we've got some great resources on our website. Thanks, everyone. Great questions. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nancy. Nancy Lindborg is in high demand at our councils to give speeches around the country, as is her senior executive leadership. So we are very privileged to have had her present to you today. Also, I want to mention something that she mentioned, is that you can participate in the September 21 Peace Day Challenge, and the World Affairs Councils of America, as a proud partner of USIP, will be sending numerous announcements about that in advance, so you will be able to take part in the Peace Day Challenge. Please do. Now, we are going to move through an exciting tiebreaker round because you are so competitive. We ask that you observe the same rules as before. That means nothing on your table except the waters and things that you have, but pen and your answer sheet for the tiebreaker round. I'm going to invite back our judges, Dr. Rich Krebage, Mr. Matthew Hughes, and Dr. Joan Apple-Lemoyne to their table, and we will have our MC, Lieutenant Commander Pat Ryan, finish up the festivities. Okay, Pat, let's go.
I'm back. Thank you very much. Happy to be here once again. Fortunately, I get paid by the question. All right. Just a reminder, no cell phones, other devices, notebooks, purses, etc. If they found their way into the competition floor, please remove them now. Academic WorldQuest tiebreaker questions. 10 questions, multiple choice. Question 1. What new technologies feature is the Tokyo 2020 Olympics expected to showcase? A, self-driving cars, B, 5G technology, C, 8K television, D, all of the above? Question 2. In an effort to help raise funds to rebuild Iraq after its years-long war with ISIS, blank hosted the International Conference for Reconstruction of Iraq in February 2018. A, Iran, B, Kuwait, C, Saudi Arabia, D, Jordan. Question 3. Qatar in recent years has entered into production sharing agreements with international oil companies to increase crude oil reserves oil production rate levels. What company did Qatar not partner with? Ramcomo, A, B, Occidental, C, Total, D, Anadarko. Question 4. This past September, NATO became stuck in a weapons sale between blank, blank, and blank. A, Russia, the United States, Saudi Arabia. B, Turkey, the United States, Saudi Arabia. C, Turkey, Russia, the United States. D, Turkey, the United States, Iraq. Question 5. The U.S. targeted Latin American countries for further sanctions in April 2019. Which of the following countries was not included in the sanctions? A, Nicaragua, B, Venezuela, C, Bolivia, D, Cuba. Question 6. Which U.S. president announced the withdrawal of approximately 100 nuclear weapons from South Korea under the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty? A, George W. Bush, B, George H.W. Bush, C, Bill Clinton, D, Ronald Reagan. Question 7. Which disease prompted the UN Security Council to declare it a security threat in 2001? A, SARS, B, H5N1 avian influenza, C, malaria, D, HIV/AIDS. Question 8. In 2017's WTO work, the U.S. focused agricultural negotiation efforts on what? A, improving transparency, B, increasing U.S. market access in Asia, C, improving dispute settlement procedures, D, increasing U.S. agricultural exports. Question 9. Unispace, the UN Conference on the Exploration and Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, was first held in 1968 following the passing of which treaty? A, Outer Space Peace Treaty, B, Outer Space Treaty, C, Peaceful Exploration Space Treaty, D, Space Race Treaty. Question 10. Which organization is most often the first potential refugees register with when initiating their migration process to the U.S.? A, U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, B, Citizenship and Immigration Services, C, Bureau of Population, Refugees and Migration, D, UN High Commissioner for Refugees. This concludes the tiebreaker round. Please hold your answer sheets up high so the scorekeepers can collect them. All right, if I could have your attention, please. We're going to go through the questions and answers for the tiebreaker round. Is the timekeeper's table ready with the slides? Great. Okay. Tiebreaker round, question 1. What new technological feature is the Tokyo 2020 Olympics expected to showcase? D, all of the above. 2, in an effort to raise funds to rebuild Iraq after its years-long war with ISIS, Kuwait hosted the International Conference for Reconstruction of Iraq in February 2018. Question 3. Qatar in recent years has entered into production sharing agreements with international oil companies to increase crude oil reserves and oil production rate levels. What company did Qatar not partner with? A, Ramcomo. Question 4. This past September, NATO became stuck in a weapons sales between Turkey, Russia, and the United States. Question 5. The U.S. targeted Latin American countries for further sanctions in April 2019. Which of the following countries was not included in the sanctions? Bolivia. Question 6. Which U.S. president announced the withdrawal of approximately 100 nuclear weapons from South Korea under the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty? B, George H.W. Bush. Question 7. Which disease prompted the UN Security Council to declare it a security threat in 2001? D, HIV/AIDS. Question 8. In 2017's WTO work, the U.S. focused agricultural negotiation efforts on what? A, improving transparency. Question 9. Unispace, the UN conference on the exploration and peaceful uses of outer space, was first held in 1968 following the passing of which treaty? B, Outer Space Treaty. And question 10. Which organization is most often the first potential refugees register when initiating their migration process to the U.S.? D, UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Those are your tiebreaker questions, and stay in your places. We'll have some results from the scoring table in just a moment.
Well, we do have a decision, and we'll hear about it momentarily to keep you just in suspense a tiny bit longer. It is my great pleasure to present to you Fatima Al Bakr, who is the Public Affairs Coordinator at the Embassy of the State of Qatar in the United States. Fatima led a World Affairs Councils of America delegation with me to Doha last October. She and her colleagues at the Foreign Ministry and at the Embassy provided such great hospitality, and the winning team is going to find out what that is all about in June. But right now, Fatima, please address our group. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by taking a moment to congratulate all of you. You have all represented yourselves, your schools, and your communities so well, and rose to each challenge you were faced with. The way you collaborate with The way you collaborate with your teams, work together to problem solve and supported one another to each step of the way reminded me of why you are all here. You have done an incredible job and have so much to be proud of. I know that I'm proud of you. Give yourselves a round of applause for a job well done. I also want to thank Bill and Liz, the great team from the World Affairs Council of America, all of the local chapters across the United States who made this opportunity possible for you all and for us to be a part of. The work of World Affairs Council of America is impactful among communities throughout the United States and the world, and we look forward to continuing to make an impact together. I won't go on for longer. It's time to find out the team who will be joining us in Doha at the end of June. So thank you so much for having me here, and let's get it started.
So we are having viewers at home as well, and it's important to say that the generosity of the Embassy of the State of Qatar has also provided us with all expenses paid study tour for 10 students around the country who submitted essays and videos, and I would like to read their names for the record. They are Ethan Andes of Springboro High School in Ohio, Daniela Barth, Mount Academy, Esopus, New York, Tavier Kittredge, Lincoln High School, Portland, Oregon, Evan Odegaard, Nova Classical Academy in St. Paul, Minnesota, Anya Razmi, Hathaway Brown School in Shaker Heights, Ohio, Alexandra Shank, Punahou School in Honolulu, Lucas Watson, Simsbury High in Simsbury, Connecticut, Tori Growar, Seneca Valley Senior High School in Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania, Antonio Carapella, Mount Lebanon High School in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And here, one of the winners is Brendan Burns of Stanley Lake High School, Westminster, Colorado. Brendan, you can stand. You, along with the other 9 and the 4 champions of this competition, will go to Doha June 21st to 27th. It will be an amazing journey for you. Congratulations. Now, the tiebreaker scores were actually, the tiebreaker was between teams 2 and 3. And we have a decision separating them, and so we'll go in reverse order. So with 89 points in the regular round, third place is Mount Academy, World Affairs Council, Mid-Hudson Valley. Congratulations, Mount Academy. Please stand. Let's have a trophy. So I'd like each of you to introduce yourself to the audience.
My name is Alec Kupchal.
My name is Carolyn Domer. I'm Heidi Keiderling.
Kent Thompson.
Okay, let's, yeah. And I present this to you.
Thank you. So if we could go just to the side so the podium is not in front of the photo.
Okay.
Moving over.
Okay.
Perfect. And we're going to have several versions. And then, okay, and right here, please. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. Okay, thank you.
Congratulations. There will be other prizes for third place and second place, which we'll give after all of this. Second place, also with 89 points after the regular competition, DuPont Manual High School, World Affairs Council of Kentucky and Southern Indiana. Congratulations. introduce yourself.
I'm Jackson Arnold.
Agranon Gandhi.
Andrew Smith.
Aditya Mehta.
And come on over so that we can all, with Fatima also, take a picture. Alrighty. So, 94 points. They did a great job. It's a different team from the same place. Jasper High School, World Affairs Council, Dallas, Fort Worth.
I'm Pranav, Patadath in Adaville.
I'm Renee Lee.
I'm Aditya Karthik.
I'm Michelle Ma.
Oh, we have a small gift for you.
So we will look forward to their social media posts when they are in Doha, Qatar. I want to thank the teachers and chaperones for the Jasper High, DuPont Manual High, Mount Academy students, and indeed to the teachers, chaperones, and parents of all of you who are here, and for the incredible job that you've been putting in since we got this year's program underway last fall. I would like to thank our sponsors, primarily Carlos and Malu Alvarez, in whose name this competition has been held for the last 5 years. Their generosity has endowed Academic WorldQuest, and we continue to grow that endowment. Thank you, Carlos and Malu. I want to thank you. I would like to thank again the Embassy of the State of Qatar and the Foreign Ministry for the wonderful prizes and for the support throughout the year that they've been giving the World Affairs Councils of America to our programs through the leadership mission we enjoyed last October, and also of our national conference in November. By the way, the essay and video contest winners will be eligible for scholarships for that program in November. Also to NATO, which is celebrating its 70th anniversary this April. Johnson & Sterling. Sam Johnson has served our WACA National Board and Advisory Council for several years. Sasakawa USA, the United States Institute of Peace, and the Foreign Policy Association. I want to thank our judges and our MC, Pat Ryan, and judges Matthew Hughes, Joan Lemoyne, and Rich Crepage for being here again this year. And if I may bring my staff to the stage, this event could not have worked out at all without my Chief Operating Officer, who I almost called the Chief Executive Officer because she really is. Liz Brailsford joined us a year ago. Liz put together a fine team, and the organization really relies on her. Thank you, Liz. We are joined also by Rachel Pastar, our new Communications and Marketing Officer, Rachel Pastor. Please come up. You want to get on the other side of me? Jillian Foster, who is our timekeeper, and Francesca Chachua, 2 interns this spring, who've been working really hard on the program and also to bring you this wonderful weekend. Jillian and Francesca.
Let's pause for a picture.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to get 2 more people in this picture, but we could do.
Okay,
Well, because we have 2 interns from from summer, who also contributed to the question writing and so forth for the local councils. So Luke Navratil, now at the Hudson Institute, and Anna Bonsu, who are our summer interns from 2018.
She's with Vanda Pharmaceuticals.
And Anna's now with Vanda Pharmaceuticals. I hope they'll become a sponsor. You guys can come around to my right. Okay, one quick photo of this group.
Yay! Act like you like each other. Oh, sorry.
Yes, thanks. Wonderful. And stay. Also, our former employee who's now at Parson Corp, Drew Lorelli, Megan Day, and Aislinn Lee, Aislinn will be our fall 1918 intern, and Bridget Newberry from Jakawa, the Junior Council on World Affairs from Dayton, Ohio, who has been intrepid. They've all been kind of Wizards of Oz down there in the scoring den. Thank you all for coming. This would not have been possible without this great group of people. So now I hope you'll enjoy the Peace Trail and sightseeing and think about telling your friends, your family members, and anyone in your communities to be part of WorldQuest and the World Affairs Councils of America. Thank you very much. And if you're a winner, come back up. Thank you.